Howard, I've always thought of you as a small, weak, and gutless man. But you know, there's no reason to be rude.
T'es belle.
A contemporary Western from Clint Eastwood. Nani Moretti brings us domestic drama in Rome and a brief romantic encounter here in Paris. That's all coming up in today's film show. And for that, I'm joined by critic Lisa Nesselson. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, Olivia. Now
we're starting with the young Mr. Eastwood, who at 91 years old is still telling stories as an actor and a director. His latest film is called Macho, and it's out in France this week.
You know, he's not only an icon of what it can mean to be an American male, from super tough to sensitive and everything in between. He's a great American success story, parlaying good looks, talent, hard work, and luck into an enviable career as an actor and director, in addition to producing and often musically scoring his films. Not bad for a guy who may never have graduated from high school. If we started showing you posters of films of his that I personally like, we'd be here all day. Macho falls squarely within Eastwood's range as a performer. If you've never seen a Clint Eastwood film, this isn't the place to start. But if you're a fan, this hits the cisgender, heteronormative, flirtatious, non-ageist spot. Put in plain English, it's incredibly old-fashioned. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's set in 1980. Clint plays Mike Milo, a once famed rodeo rider who became less fun to be around after he fell off a horse, broke his back, and tragedy struck his wife and son. Eastwood never, ever overacts, which means that some of the performers around him come across as too emphatic when they're not downright clunky. Now, the macho of the title is a rooster, the cockfighting prized pet of Raphael, the 13-year-old boy that Mike is sent to Mexico City to pick up and bring back to his dad in Texas, whether the boy's mom and her henchmen go along with that or not. It turns out that carrying a rooster can be a smarter move than carrying a gun.
A rooster, there's a surprise, but the grumpy old man persona, that certainly sounds familiar. Let's take a look at a man with nothing to prove, proving he has nothing to prove.
This macho thing is overrated. Just people trying to be macho, show that they've got grit. That's about all they end up with. It's like anything else in life. You think you got all the answers. I'm Mike.
Marta.
And you realize as you get older, you don't have any of them. We all have to make choices in life, kid. You have to make yours.
Mike is good with cars, good with horses, with all kinds of animals, it turns out, and not too shoddy with the ladies. The moral of the story, as we just heard there, is that trying to be more virile than thou is a dopey approach to life. Because the French are habitually less likely to assume that an actor is like the characters he plays, the French championed Eastwood as an auteur way before Americans did. In other words, they did not assume he's the man with no name, a spaghetti western fame, or the renegade cop, Dirty Harry Halligan, daring a punk to make my day. Eastwood observed the waste on Hollywood film sets as a young actor, built a trusted team of collaborators, and to this day always comes in on budget and often ahead of schedule. Now, I always read the credits to the bitter end and am intrigued by one I saw here, namely snake removal technician. Now, something tells me that doesn't consist of saying, Mr. Snake, would you be so kind as to slither off our set? But I could be wrong about that.
Certainly an essential job, I'm sure. Now, on to another multi-hyphenate, Italian writer, director, actor. Nani Moretti is back with his first film in 6 years. It's called Tre Piani, or Three Stories, Three Floors. It was shown in competition at the Cannes Film Festival in July. Tell us more about this one.
Well, it's a strange fact of film distribution that while Italian classics of the 1950s and 1960s are almost always being revived in French cinemas, relatively few contemporary Italian movies are released here. An exception is Italian writer, director, actor Nani Moretti, whose work almost always gets a warm welcome. However, not not so much this time. The French newspaper Le Monde's review is snidely headlined, "How do you say okay boomer in Italian?" Tre Piani, or Three Floors, is the adaptation of an Israeli novel called Three Floors Up in English, changing the action from Tel Aviv to Rome. It follows the neighbors in a three-story apartment building whose lives intersect. Now, 3 stories is a good pun. 3 floors is an accurate architectural description.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the people whose lives are examined over the course of a decade.
Renato è guasto. Si dimentica sempre tutto. A volte anche come si chiama.
E forse non dobbiamo lasciargliela più.
Che fa Beatrice? Dorme?
Sì, tu torna presto, però che non mi piace stare da sola.
Ma non sei più da sola adesso.
Non fare il furbo. Torna presto, ti prego.
Che succede? Ma perché Renato non risponde al cellulare, scusa?
Ma non ce l'ha il cellulare, non se l'è portato. È così distratto in questo periodo.
Francesca! Deve essere successo qualcosa nel parco e Francesca non ce lo racconta. Quando li ho trovati c'era qualcosa di strano in Renato che non ti so spiegare.
So, Lisa, you more or less enjoyed this, but I remember at the festival in July, quite a few of your colleagues found it a bit flat, a bit of a lukewarm response.
You mean the critic who compared its lighthearted tone to the biblical 10 plagues in Egypt? I don't usually enjoy Moretti's movies, and I don't think this one is particularly good. However, I found myself very interested in the couple. He's a judge, played by Moretti himself. She's a lawyer whose wayward son crashes his car into the ground floor apartment of their building while drunk, killing a woman in the process. The son assumes his well-connected folks will get him off the hook. Well, dad is having none of that, and mom is a loving mother, hamstrung by what her son has actually done. There's a device that really got to me. After one character dies, his widow goes on interacting with his voice on their answering machine. And when I brought that up in a few discussions in Cannes, I learned to my surprise that 2 people I know had done something very similar. We're accustomed to seeing the departed in photos or in home movies, but the persistence of the voice of someone who's no longer with us is strangely powerful.
Very poignant detail.
Yeah. The movie melds memory loss, and supposed child molestation with an episode in which a very young woman initiates sex with an older married man she has always had a crush on and then blames him for the encounter. I was glad not to live in that building, but not unhappy watching the residents as mostly bad things happen to them.
Okay, one for those of us who enjoy a bit of a Schadenfreude. But back to France now with a very independent French film. It's out this week. It's called Long Time No See in the English translation. Tell us more.
Deceptively simple, emotionally complex, short, and bittersweet as can be, this is the contemporary tale of the chance meeting between a man and a woman who knew each other 9 years prior and strolled together talking a blue streak between 2 trains, the original French title. In just 75 minutes, writer-director Pierre Fimon and his cast depict one domestic reality and toy with the notion that another one can replace it if the pair say the word. Now, it was filmed in Paris in just 5 days in the blocks around and between the Austerlitz train station and the Jardin des Plantes in a series of continuous shots that pretty much unspool in real time. She's Marianne and has a train to catch at a few minutes past 11, so there's a built-in suspense about whether she'll be on it or not. Violinist Grégoire would rather she stay. In far more modest terms, this reminds me of David Lean's 1945 gem, Brief Encounter, but repositioned for the 21st century.
It certainly sounds quite romantic. Let's take a look at Entre deux trains, between 2 trains, or Long Time No See.
Je vis seul, je donne tout au conservatoire, qui me le rend bien. N'est-ce pas, Grégoire? Ouais. Et j'aime manger.
Écoutez, Michel, je suis ravie d'avoir fait votre connaissance. Je vous embrasse. Voilà. Vous allez partir par là et nous, on continue par là. Fait comme ça? N'en veuillez vraiment pas à Grégoire, tout est de ma faute. Je l'ai rencontré à la gare, je l'ai reconnu, ça fait 9 ans qu'on ne s'était pas vus. J'ai voulu boire un café, il a refusé parce qu'il avait un cours de violon à donner, mais j'ai insisté, j'avais besoin de parler à quelqu'un. J'ai fait des examens à la Pitié-Salpêtrière et j'avais besoin de parler à un ami, il a tout fait pour me remonter le moral. J'ai un cancer. Voilà, je suis désolée. Viens, on y va.
So this comes from a really interesting director. He's a real cinephile as well.
Yes, Pierre Fimon works as a projectionist at one of Paris's best programmed art houses and first made his name in 2015 with the documentary Close Encounters with Vilmos Zsigmond, a charming tribute to the late Hungarian director of photography whose films include Close Encounters of the Third Kind, The Deer Hunter, Deliverance, and Heaven's Gate. Long Time No See is a French success story before anybody buys a ticket. It has been to festivals galore, including countries as far-flung as Mexico, Russia, and China, and won awards in Spain, Kosovo, Chile, Lebanon, and India, suggesting there's something universal about it. That's understandable because the actors are marvelous and the stakes keep shifting.
Certainly seems charming. Now, finally, we've got an annual festival here in Paris that takes the temperature of the world. It's called The State of the World, no less. It's on at the Forum des Images. It's trying to take a snapshot of where we are as a society. That's quite the challenge.
It is, but the programming is superb this year. I'm tempted to just move in for 10 days. Over 40 films, many with their directors on hand, spanning civic protest and resistance, Brexit, the Yellow Vest movement, the consequences and challenges of immigration, institutional blah blah, and more. It really is an attempt to look at the world we're living in now through the eyes of filmmakers, starting with Karuter Ben Haniez, The Man Who Sold His Skin, a terrific satire of the international art market that made it all the way to the Oscars last year, representing Tunisia but has not been released yet in France. Now, she's in Tunis shooting her next film, but will provide video intros to her 8 shorts, documentaries, and features. British author Jonathan Coe has been given carte blanche to program 12 films about what it means to be British, ranging from Hitchcock to Stephen Frears' The Queen. 14 local premieres, including Paul Schrader's terrific The Card Counter, starring Oscar Isaac. And what more could you ask for than having José Camus, the French translator of George Orwell's 1984, on hand for the discussion of Newspeak and a showing of Michael Radford's excellent film.
1984 in 2021. It does seem very pertinent. Lisa, thank you very much for that roundup. We'll leave you with a glimpse of the state of the world as seen by the planet's filmmakers. Do remember to check out our website for more movie news. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome.